We are the tribe from the north, we're brave and we're bold. Defeating our rivals never gets old. Making our way to the Big Sky Conference. Watch out, 'cause here comes the silver and gold. Whoa, whoa. This is Tubbs at the club for the Vandals of Idaho.
Welcome back, Tribe from the North, brave and bold, to the official, unofficial podcast of your Idaho Vandals and the Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brian Marceau, joined today by Martin Trombone Capone Heemstra. Martin,
how are you doing?
Well, in spite of the news we're going to get to, man, again, we're talking Vandal sports, so things are going well. And today, we have a couple rough outings we're going to cover from both the men's and women's basketball teams and see what those out-of-conference games we just finished might tell us about the conference season that hits week 2, the weekend of New Year's. But first, a nothing like cracking a Montucky cold snack, an ultra-refreshing light beer born in majestic Big Sky country. The best part is, when you crack a snack, you're giving back. Montucky cold snack donates 8% of all profits back to local causes, even right here in Idaho, supporting organizations like CW Hogs and Idaho Food Bank. Yeehaw! That's freaking awesome. Montucky Cold Snacks, the light American lager for pow-pow rippers, gator wranglers, pony riders, and badass do-gooders. Visit MontuckyColdSnacks.com today to find out how to get ya ass some snacks. And Martin, you know, we of course try to not live in the worst part of Vandal fandom, but this was just one of those weeks, wasn't it?
Yeah, it just wasn't our way. It just wasn't basketball, University of Idaho basketball week in general.
Yeah, you know what? That's one way to put it. That is one way to put it, and you are definitely not quite living up to the ray of sunshine right now, but that's okay. Maybe there's no sunshine today. But, you know, to get to the games, our men, we're going to lead off with men's. And last week, our men played 2 games. Wednesday, we played at Washington State, the Battle of the Palouse, lost 58-61 in a game that we actually led for a decent amount before 18-0 run kind of did us in. Deandre Robinson led the way for us with 14 points on 5-8 shooting, also picked up 8 rebounds. Scott Blake chipped in 12 points, but also had 4 turnovers and a surprising number here, 0 rebounds for our starting center. And then Saturday at Cal State Bakersfield. Now, that's a team we beat last year. It's a team that we've actually been scheduling as home and home for the last handful of years to mixed results, which means it's not a bad setup for us. We lost at Cal Bakersfield 66-76. Again, Deandre Robinson led the way for us with 13 points and 2 rebounds. Gabe Quinet was our second leading scorer with 11 points, including going 3 of 5 from downtown. So, Martin, before we get into like the obvious part that we're going to have to talk about with a team that doesn't have a win yet, did you see anything that you thought was relatively promising from our Vandals? I'd like to hit a couple positives before we have to deep dive into the worst of our world.
I don't know. After listening to what you talk about basketball, I kind of don't see a whole lot of positives with there. So you might need to be the ray of sunshine for me this time for men's basketball.
Okay. You know what? I'll see what I can do, man. There were. Now, again, spoiler alert, we lose. Now, both those games were relatively close. The Cal State game was actually was nowhere near as close as the score indicated. We shot well over 50% from 3 and lost by 10. So that's what kept the score respectable. Washington State was a game. We definitely could have won that game. But the first positive I'm gonna say, after watching Deandre Robinson transfer from Tallahassee Community College, played D2 before community college, after watching him at Sac State, where I honestly thought, he doesn't look like an all Big Sky player, but he's a really solid role player. one of the things I talked about last week is really hoping he was in the starting lineup. And lo and behold, Deandre Robinson, our leading scorer now and leading rebounder, was moved into the starting lineup. To me, that's kind of a brain dead positive that the guy who to me looks like our best player, he came off the bench the first 2 games. The COVID season's kind of weird. Players who weren't with us last year, it's not shocking that it might take a little bit of game time to see exactly who's going to translate the most. But Deandre Robinson moving in to the starting lineup, I thought that was a big deal for us. But I know, Martin, one of the things we talked about, at least in direct messages, is you felt better watching Hunter Jack Madden these last 2 games compared to the Sac State games, didn't you?
Maybe a little bit. It just seemed a little more settled and not as rattled, if that makes sense. Not as like it's your first 2 Division I games. Granted, they were Sacramento State, but it seemed a little calmer. Calmer.
Yeah, I think Hunter Jack Madden, and this is a thing we're just going to have to get used to with this team. And we've honestly had to tell ourselves this for 3 years because the roster turnover we've had since the 2017-2018, that was the Vic Sanders, BJ Blake team. Since the year after that, so from 2018-2019 on, we've kind of had the same discussion every year of, hey, we have a bunch of new guys. We have to see how they do. We got a bunch of new guys. We have to see how they adjust. Well, hey, we're here again. Hunter Jack Madden, he's our backup point guard right now, and he did look a lot more comfortable running the offense. He was a lot more aggressive on the offensive end against Washington State and against Cal State Bakersfield than either of the Sacramento State games. Now we'll get to shoot percentages later because there's still room for improvement there. But another positive, and one of the last couple we got is Gabe Quinet from Moscow High School. We saw him look like a pretty solid shooter at times last year, and right now he's hitting 46.7% from 3. When he gets to catch and shoot, he gets to be a weapon as a catch and shoot player. That's something that, we probably have to contextualize this discussion a little bit because this team right now, they just don't look good. So when we talk about positives, we're probably looking at, hey, is there anything that's going to help us pull off a few wins this year? Or are there any pieces that look like if they stay with the program for a couple of years, they could be part of teams that are better than this team? And Gabe Quinet hitting from deep like that is certainly that's absolutely something that, if he's on a different roster, he's just a catch and shoot guy. That is a pretty big deal for us. But we transition out, Martin, to really the bigger takeaways. Any other positive things you think I'm missing or you want to spend time on?
No, I'm going to say might be kind of a question, but do you think that the WSU game was kind of maybe more of maybe this team actually might be competitive, or do you think that was maybe like a one-game wonder? Kind of back to being the same old Idaho we know and love.
So honestly, it is a matchup thing. It doesn't matter if we talk about this in basketball or football. Every sport, matchups absolutely matter. And we're going to get to this bigger takeaway in a second, but Idaho is not a great scoring team. Washington State's not a very good scoring team. I said last week, if we're going to be competitive, we need the game to be right around 60. Well, it was 58-61, which if we're going to be competitive, just based off what we've seen offensively, it's got to be lower scoring right now. So keeping WSU to 61 is part of what let that game be feasible for us. Honestly, were it not for that 18-0 run, WSU went on late in the second half, and we still came back. We had the ball with a chance to tie it at the end of the game. Now, weirdly, or maybe not weirdly, we went for a 2 with like 4 seconds left and missed it instead of going for a 3 to tie it. But we still had the ball down 3 against Washington State. You can tie a game down 3. So, I guess what I'm going to say to answer that, Martin, is I think it was more of a matchup thing. Washington State has 3 wins against Big Sky teams now. They beat Eastern Washington when Eastern only played 6 guys by 3. They beat us by 3, and they beat Portland State by 4. All of those games were home games for WSU. I think what that tells you is if WSU's in the Big Sky, they're probably not winning the league, but they'd be a pretty good team. Mm-hmm. So honestly, to me, it was a matchup. It was WSU is a team that can't exploit our weaknesses to the extent that, let's say, like Cal Bakersfield, where Cal Bakersfield they're pretty athletic and they can score pretty well, and they pressure the ball on defense in a way that we don't have the ball handling to handle. That's, to me, what explains the biggest difference between those two games. Mm-hmm. But now that we've spent a little bit of time going over, the promising aspects, I mean, truly what the point we're at right now is we have to hope that there's two guys that I'm keying on that we haven't seen play yet. Kendall McHugh, he's a sophomore transfer from College of Southern Idaho, and AJ Youngman, he's a transfer shooting guard as well. We have to hope those two guys are just two of our better guys, and that the fact that those two aren't playing means other people have to assume different roles that they won't otherwise. Because really, the biggest problem I see in this team, Martin, is, and this is going to sound weird for a second, so I will make sure to contextualize this for you guys. But Idaho doesn't really have a single problem. It has a lot of interrelated problems, but to me, the biggest problem we're looking at is we have a ton of guys who are having to play up. And when I say play up, Martin, what I mean is they're guys who are having to take on a role that they're not exactly suited for. And this has been a theme for us in talking about this team, that we have some great complementary pieces, but we don't have those, if star is too dramatic a word, we don't have those all-league candidates yet that those pieces can complement. And what happens when you're in a situation like that is either you need a ton of guys, and when I say ton, I mean 4 or 5, who can average low-end double figures to make up for not having, that Vic Sanders kind of player, that BJ Blake kind of player. Or if you don't have that, which we don't right now, every single player has to take on a role about a step beyond what they're suited for. And a great example of that is Gabe Quinet. Positive already said he's hitting 46.7% on threes. When he shoots threes, for the most part, it's a catch and shoot situation. He's not doing it off the dribble. His feet are already set. He just gets to catch and go up. Martin, I want to play a game. We've played this under or lower, buy or sell. Gabe Quinet, 46.7% of these. That's a really high percentage. Like, that's higher than Vic Sanders' shot. So, like, objectively, that's just that means he's a good shooter. Is he shooting now on 2-pointers? Mm-hmm. In your question for you, is he shooting above or below 40%?
I mean, if you're shooting 46.7 on threes, you would think it's probably, you said 40%, right?
Correct.
I'd say
on twos. Yeah,
on twos, yeah. I'd say higher, just because of, like, if he's shooting that on threes, it's probably got to be a lot higher on twos.
That reminds me, I failed to introduce producer Jerry. He's with us too. So if you're watching it, you see graphics, you see headlines, anything like that. That's all producer Jerry from Great Falls, Montana. But to answer that question, this is why I brought it up about people playing a role they're not quite ready for. Gabe Quinet is not shooting close to 40% on twos. He is shooting 30.8% on 2-point shots.
Wow, that's surprising.
And look, when his misses are also pretty bad. And when I say that, when he shoots threes and misses the threes on catch and shoots, like they're close. When he's shooting twos, like the misses are atrocious. And the reason why is Gabe Quinet he should be a catch and shoot player. He's not a strong ball handler. He's a great catch and shoot 3-point shooter. But when he's shooting his twos, they're almost universally off the dribble. They're almost universally when he's trying to create shots. And when he does that, you see his accuracy just torpedoes. And this is what I mean when I say a guy taking on a role he's not quite suited for. Gabe Quinet should be playing that Chad Sherwood role from the 2017-2018 team where, there's a leading scorer who creates shots for Gabe Quinet, or he shoots catch and shoot out of we post up and a kick out from the post gets him an open three. That's the kind of player he should be right now. The issue we have is we don't have other shot creators, so Gabe Quinet is having to try to create shots that he is just not able to create. We've also talked about it with Scott Blakeney. Scott Blakeney is a fantastic finisher around the rim. He's a great opportunistic scorer, but we've tried to use him in our first few games as a go-to scorer. And the jury's in. He's going to score around 10 points a game. That's a solid contribution. But early on, we were trying to treat him as though he was something more than that, and that's just not where he's at. We could go down the line. Damon Thacker starting at point guard. He clearly is not, if you look at the point guards we've played against, he just isn't comfortable enough as a lead ball handler to be a point guard. The issue there is lack of ball handling, which you can see in our turnover margin right now, which is second worst in the Big Sky at negative 3.75 per game. So again, there isn't a single issue with Idaho that we can fix, because I'm going to circle back to that Washington State game where the reason we were able to do okay is we kept the score low. And a team that needs to keep the score low, Martin, you'd probably think that should be a defensive-oriented team, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to give you some numbers to give you the context of how good that defense has to be. In 2019, 2020, the best Big Sky scoring defenses, meaning the teams that gave up the fewest amount of points, were Sacramento State at 59.7 points per game and Northern Colorado at 62.7 points per game. You go the year before that, the best scoring defense was Montana at 68.5 points per game and Sacramento State at 69.5 points per game. The way Sac State last year was able to have that sub 60 points allowed is they played a super slow style, but they also had a scorer in the post that they used as their go-to guy. But we just gave you the best defenses in the Big Sky in the last couple years. They're giving up over 62 points a game, or the year before, it was 68 and 69. Right now, we're averaging 59 points per game while allowing 71.8 points per game. So honestly, our defense isn't surrendering a preposterous amount of points per game. If you compare it to 2018-19, that'd be towards the top in the league. Just 59 points a game, we'd have to be an elite defensive team, and all that. Our team's shooting 41.7% from three. We're not missing shots. Well, we are missing shots, but we're not missing things like threes. We're actually hitting a pretty high percentage. It's just every fix you look at right now with this team, like every single fix you look at, we just have a separate underlying issue that makes that a little bit tougher. Another thing, Martin, you want to be a slow it down team. That means you have to rebound. Well, we're getting out rebounded by 10.25 rebounds per game. It's really hard to slow the other team down when you're not rebounding and you're not limiting them to just one shot. If you could also say, hey, maybe the team needs to speed it up, but we don't have the ball handlers to speed it up. So really it's these overlapping issues. But to me, the biggest thing down the line, every guy right now is having to take on a role about a step above what they would have been on, let's say, our 2017-2018 team with Vic Sanders and BJ Blake. I mean, even Deandre Robinson, he's doing great right now, averaging 11.5 points per game. I mean, if that's our leading scorer at 11.5. And he's not that great at creating off the dribble. He's a very good catch and shoot player. But again, those catch and shoot guys do need someone to help create shots. And we just don't have that right now, Martin. I mean, unless I'm going to ask you this question. Do you think that, is that a little bit too dramatic and coming from me that these overlapping things right now we're just translating into it's not a great team?
No, I think you're just telling it like it is. You're being honest with everybody, I think.
Yeah, so I guess we try not to live forever in the discussing the problems. It's just, this is where we're at, this men's team. This is 3 years. It's wild to think in 2017, 2018, that team was picked to win the Big Sky, and we quote unquote disappointed at finishing third. It's year three of kind of the same thing. And oh man, what I'm going to say is we're going to shift to a different segment so we don't talk ourselves into depression. This is Average Jerry basketball questions in honor of producer Jerry. And these questions, it's really just put a button on basketball. Should Idaho fans be optimistic after this week? What do you think, Martin?
I think yes. I think WSU showed that like they can, if they can hold people like you said, like the 60 points, 60, high 50s points, they can win. But if they can't, yes, I think they should be optimistic against the bad teams. But I don't know outside of that. What do you think, Brian?
Oh, man, the thing to be optimistic about is I really think you have to just accept this team's not going to be very good and look at what are the pieces who could contribute on a solid team next year, a couple of years from now. Deandre Robinson, God, I hope we get a go-to scorer to put around him in the next year because he's a very solid piece. Scott Blakeney, he's been here for 4 years. The thing to be optimistic about is he was here for one of the good years. He stuck through through all the bad years as well. That means that's, hey, that's a committed Vandal. So there's minor things to be optimistic about, but really the Cal State game where we shot 56% from three and lost by 10. And seriously, if we shoot average from three that game, we lose by 20. So yeah, I don't think there's a ton to be optimistic about. Another average Jerry question: will we surpass last year's 4 conference wins? Martin, well, what do you say? Are we going to beat 4 wins in conference?
No, I think they might get 4 at best.
I think the thing we have to be happy about is that NAU and Idaho State are both dumpster fires. NAU just got killed by Colorado State, including NAU surrendered a 31-2 run in the second half. Yeah. We haven't done that yet, so we can at least pat ourselves on the back there. Idaho State, I watched, I've seen a little bit of Idaho State when they've played D1 teams. Their offense is absolutely atrocious. So if we're going to pick up 4 wins, we have to beat those teams. Otherwise, we're already done with Sac State. We might be able to sneak up on a couple teams, but at this point, other than NAU and Idaho State, the moral victory for us is being competitive. And to close it out, another average Jerry basketball question just to get average fans clear on, there were some basics with the team. Brian, what is my optimal lineup for our Vandals? Man, one, we just have to hope Kendall McHugh and AJ Youngman are 2 of our best players, and we haven't seen them play. So if those 2 guys are 2 of our best players, then we need to pencil in one of our problems is we've just had 2 starters we haven't seen play yet. Other than that, Deandre Robinson has to start. Scott Blakeney has to start. And I think we're getting to the point where we need to decide, should we go big and presume that it's more important for us to improve that defensive rebounding margin of negative 10 and a quarter rebounds a game. If we can cut that down to 4, that's actually pretty dramatic, and that'll give us points on its own. So really, since Deandre Robinson can shoot, if we have Deandre Robinson, fingers crossed on AJ Youngman or Gabe Quinet, I guess, as our shooting guard, and then Kendall McHugh is a sufficient point guard, then I'd say go big. Scott Blakeney and Tanner Christensen, or Scott Blakeney and Jack Wilson, because this team's just not going to outscore teams, but we have to improve defensive output some. And on that note, before we jump to Martin, listeners know we're back into weekly or almost weekly episodes on Tubs of the Club. And with our favorite season, football season, just a couple months away, if you like what we're doing, consider giving Tubs of the Club a rating on iTunes or Spotify, share our posts on social media, or if you can, consider chipping in to helping us keep the lights on by becoming a patron at Tubs at the Club by signing up at patreon.com/Tubs of the Club. We have a good thing going that's only going to get better as our football season looks to take another step. Our men's basketball team somehow turns it around, and our women's team, aside from this week, really just keeps on keeping on. And listener support helps us cover operating costs while Chris, Martin, Alex, and I do our best to give you the Vandal coverage you need. Sign up to our Patreon or make a one-time gift at paypal.me/Tubs the Club. Thank you to Tub Card members Dallas Hammer, Mathew, Janicek, Tub Token member Nick Stutzman, Premium Drink Token members Nick Weber, Dave Ellison, Taylor Cash, and our newest, referenced last week, but he's our newest, Daryn Cozak. And with that, Martin, talk me off the ledge. Let's talk about the women's team.
Well, it wasn't it wasn't a good week for Vandal women's basketball. After starting out a great 2-0 against, albeit Sac State, they kind of came back down to earth against Texas, losing 48-73. They're losing to number 23 Texas. Got to give them their respect there. 48-73. Beyonce led Idaho with 13 points, 11 rebounds. Sydney Gandy went 3 for 5 from 3. And the more sad result, losing to Washington State, 55-74. Sydney Gandy scored 16. Beyonce had nearly a double-double with 15 and 9 rebounds. Honestly, it wasn't. We wish that. Honestly, I kind of wish the score for Texas was better, but it just they're a top 25 women's basketball team, and Big Sky teams just don't beat teams like that because there's unless things are just going perfect. And moving on to the game, I was more excited to see Washington State. It was truly a game at two halves. They started out strong, but they started off slow. Only scoring both scoring only 9 points. Things started to pick up in the second quarter, going on a 9-0 run to going ahead to 21-14, and then things kind of, I wouldn't say go, and then things wouldn't kind of say go off the rails, but things kind of, the tide turned, and with Natalie Klinker going out of the game with an injury, and things start slowly turn towards Idaho, but it goes turn towards WSU, but they keep the lead and keep the lead at half. And then second half was just, I wouldn't say the worst half of basketball I've seen from them, but it was not pretty at all. Idaho started out with make sure I'm reading this right. They outscored us 32-14 in the third, and they just got hot. WSU made their shots, and Idaho didn't. It's as simple as that, and that's how the game kind of played itself out in the second half. We got out-rebounded by – WSU out-rebounded us by 13, and we got outscored in the paint by 30. It wasn't pretty at all. And then the only kind of surprising thing for me was we didn't see Gabby Harrington play. I don't know if that's a COVID issue or if it was just an injury issue, but that was the only kind of surprise not player to me from that game.
Yeah, the takeaway for me from both these games truly doesn't worry me. Like when we were talking about the men's team, the listeners will understand I'm just not high on them. These two games didn't really change my opinion of the women's team.
Oh, yeah.
We talked last week about the strength of the women's team. While they have capable shooters, what really is going to win them games is dribble penetration and being able to run teams out in transition. Mm-hmm. Against Sac State, just a reference point, our first game against Sac State, we had 56 points in the paint. I believe the WSU game is going to be the template that Big Sky teams are going to attempt to use against our women's team, where instead of the 56 points in the paint that we had against Sac State, we had 18. And teams are going to try to limit our penetration. Also, if we're losing the rebounding battle, like we talked about, then transition's a little bit harder. And teams are going to try to kill penetration for us and say, Idaho beat us from the three. There will be some Big Sky teams that are not going to be able to stop our penetration the way Power 5 schools can. University of Texas, that's why I don't care about us losing at Texas. I wish it was closer, but they're a top 25 team. They should have better athletes than a Big Sky team. Yeah. Washington State, we certainly had an ability to win that game. Really, the third quarter, we shot 30%. Yeah. WSU shoots 62%. But the thing I'm going to point to, we were also 3 of 16 from behind the three in the second half. That's WSU cutting off a ton of our. That's WSU cutting off our penetration, cutting off our transition, making us win from outside. And this team, though it has capable shooters, I wouldn't yet say we have elite shooters on this team.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't so say as they cut it. I don't want to go as back say they cut us off. I think maybe things would have been maybe a little different or maybe closer if we didn't get I'm not trying to say pin things on Natty's injury or anything like that, but I'm just trying to say one thing I'd like to say is maybe things have been. I think things would have been a lot more closer with Natty in the game and Natty not injured and playing, because things they just looked like a different team with her not being there in that inside presence for us.
Oh yeah, absolutely, that matters. But I mean, seriously, just look at the box scores at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Teams like Idaho State, like NAU, are going to try to limit our transition. They're going to try to limit ability to get open shots through penetration, both inside the key, as in points in the paint, and all from open kickouts. And really, I don't think a ton of Big Sky teams even have the athletes to ultimately do that. We've seen that from the last few years. Power 5 teams are just different. They're a different monster. And it's kind of hard to compare, let's say, men versus WSU and women versus WSU, because the Washington State women's program is just stronger than the Washington State men's program, similar to how the Idaho women's program is stronger than the Idaho men's program.
Mm-hmm.
But so Martin, honestly, I mean, I already said I'm really not that concerned about this for our women's team. Should I be?
I wouldn't say concern. I wouldn't say so. Even taking if this team with the players they have available right now keep going forward, I still think they're going to be able to compete for a Big Sky title. They've shown they could do that before in stretches, and I think if you're going to have a coach that can fix the issues, or the coach that can fix the issues, it's John Noodley, Krista Stanford, Drew Muscatel, and the other one's escaping, Jordan Kelly. I think this coaching staff is going to be able to fix it and get them ready for Big Sky teams. That's why Coach Noodley plays these tough. Another thing is Coach Noodley also does try to play like really tough out-of-conference schedules. There's nothing to be afraid of right now.
And that's not so different from University of Montana on the men's side, where it's pretty typical for University of Montana on the men's side to come into conference season with a losing out-of-conference record and then to do absolutely fine in conference. That's honestly what I think our women's season is going to look like. And listeners may have noticed I chose to not spend a ton of time previewing our men's final out-of-conference game at University of Utah on December 8th. Because again, it's a Pac-12 school. University of Utah's men's team should be better than WSU. It should be the best team we've played. I'm just going to hope there's some positives we can take from that game, and then we can roll into conference play December 31st against one of the other dumpster fires, NAU, and get some momentum for our team. But our women, Martin, have a couple more out-of-conference games, don't they?
Yeah. I forget who it is. Yeah, they have a couple more out-of-conference games against a fun one I've always enjoyed to watch them play against, Seattle U and University of Arizona. Hopefully a revenge game for them after the WNIT loss last year and a half ago now, 2 years ago.
Well, now, University of Arizona, that's another ranked game. Mm-hmm. So that's a real tough schedule, and it's also pretty short notice. We just added that game against Arizona a couple of days ago.
Yeah, like the 13th or 14th.
Yeah, so that's new. Seattle U, I think, is more the game that I've got my eye on right now. Yeah. That's December 21st, Monday. And also for our women, when they kick off Big Sky play, they're at Northern Arizona, which Northern Arizona is predicted to be a top 4 team in the Big Sky.
Oh, yeah.
So again, this is just the inverse of the men's.
Yeah. And they also beat us last year too, but it'll be another close games like the other ones have been in the past for them. Yeah,
the last thing before we get to your average Jerry questions are it's not that Gina Markson is having a poor start or anything. It's that I don't think she's quite hit her stride yet. Well, actually, she was fine against Sac State. But she had 2 Texas and WSU. You call it based off her standards, we call it subpar shooting.
Yeah.
She also didn't get the assist, but also when you're missing shots, it's hard to pick up assists. Gina Markson's really the person I'm going to have my eye on against Seattle U.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I think for me, it might be, gosh, I'm trying to remember what it was last year. Sorry, I should have had this last year's schedule so I can look at this. Go. I think for me, it's going to be, if I got this right, I think the other one could be Beyond Speed. She had a double the last game. I think she's another one to look out for against Seattle U.
Okay. Oh yeah, of course. I mean, those are two.
Yeah, the obvious two. Sorry.
Yeah, the obvious two. And also, hey, Gabby Harrington missed some time, and that's a starter who we didn't have for those games. Particularly against WSU, that truly could be the difference. If you subtract that awful third quarter, that's a game. And obviously, it's very easy to say, if you subtract and we didn't play well, we played fine. Yeah, okay, sure. That is a little bit odd. But truly for the women, they were competitive every single quarter except that one where, again, the shooting percentage was just 30%, 60%. That's your game. But Martin, I have a couple average Jerry questions for producer Jerry, our average fan. Make sure he feels clear on our women's team. So understanding that there is more talent accumulation at the top of the women's game than the men's, meaning that like University of UConn women are miles ahead. Yes. Whereas in the, for men, like Gonzaga's number one now, but Gonzaga worked their way into being a power program because the talent gap between a strong mid-major team and a mid-level Power 5 team in men's is essentially non-existent. But understanding there's more talent accumulation at the top of the women's game right now than the men's. How big of a gap would you say there is between Idaho, a top Big Sky team, and someone like Texas, nationally ranked in the Big 12, or let's say Arizona, nationally ranked out of the Pac-12?
How would you like me to measure this? Just by like stats or size, or
just explain in your mind like the talent gap between a top Big Sky team and a nationally ranked Power 5 team like Texas.
It's big. It's like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There is a huge gap between. It's like for some. It's like kind of playing. Trying to think of how I can word this in a way that might make sense to some. It's like if like a Major League Baseball team played like a AA or AAA team. It's your AA team might have quality talent there, but they're just not as developed. They don't have maybe better equipment. They don't have maybe the better coaching staff compared to, say, a major league team that's going to have the best of everything, the best money can buy. Or for soccer fans, like between like a Premier League team and a League Two team.
Yeah, what I'd say is, and I'm actually going to circle back to what I talked about with teams trying to cut off penetration. Power 5 teams are going to have the ability to, and yes, Jerry had no idea there's a huge gap, so that's what we're here for, Jerry. So just keep asking the questions, man. But some of the Big Sky teams, again, like this is not a secret. If we can watch the women's teams and watch our men's games, but we're talking women right now. If you can watch these teams, you can identify stuff like we have, which is our women are solid shooters, but they're not elite. This isn't like a team with Michaela Friends, Taylor Pierce, where they're going to just shoot. They're going to kill teams from three, and there's essentially not much teams can do about it. Our calling card is athleticism, dribble penetration. Well, you play a team like Texas. They're going to have the athletes to limit that penetration, which then it just means all of our shots are going to be more difficult against a team like Texas than against the Big Sky teams. Whereas like the Big Sky teams, they can scheme that way. That doesn't mean they have the players to execute it anyway. So to me, I'd say the gap is absolutely meaningful, and I view it more as like the raw athleticism. Between the two players. And yes, like the training equipment, all that stuff matters. But once you get on the floor, it's just 5-on-5. And if you can keep the other player in front of you, you can keep from getting by you pretty much make sure they have tougher shots. We can talk about schematics, all that basketball. You get down to it. Really, it's, did you make your shots? Did you miss your shots? Did you get good shots? Did you get bad shots? And Power 5 teams, they're going to make Big Sky teams have to make tough shots to win.
Mm-hmm.
And Martin, another average Jerry question.
Mm-hmm.
Since we're talking about this, neither of us are clearly upset about losing the Power 5 teams.
Mm-hmm.
Should we have an expectation that Vandal Hoops should win some of these games? I mean, considering that our women's team is, the most successful program at the university in the past decade. Is there a problem with us that we're saying, look, they're Power 5 teams. What are you expecting right now?
I think yes. I think you should maybe have an expectation to maybe beat. Maybe not like for going. I wouldn't say I would say yes. Maybe have an expectation to beat a WSU type of team. Maybe every once in a while, if you know your team. Actually, you should have expecting to beat like a team like a WSU maybe every once in a while. Texas, you should hope for a good game. Maybe see some good things out of the game, but you shouldn't expect Idaho to beat a Texas at all. I would. It sounded bad, but I wouldn't, even as sunshine and rainbows as I am, I wouldn't expect us to beat a Texas type team.
The way I'd answer that expectation thing is Idaho has been we've steadily stayed atop the Big Sky.
Mm-hmm.
And before we left, top the WAC. We've made NCAA tournament berths out of both conferences. We don't yet have a first round win. Now, that's partially because we get like 16 seeds, and we already talked about talent gap, where it's in the history of NCAA tournament, we have like one. I'm talking men's and women's. We have like 16 seed being a 1 seed. So, and when I talk about expectations, I think what we need to enunciate is, do we expect this team can win in the NCAA tournament? And if we think they can win the NCAA tournament, they don't have to beat Texas, but they've got to pick up some out of conference wins to have a shot at a 14 seed or a 13, 12 seed. Mm-hmm. So Texas, again, I don't care that I absolutely, there's nothing you can do to make me care that we lost to University of Texas.
Unless we're shooting like 100%, everything's just perfect for Idaho.
Look at the budget between Texas Athletics, and University of Idaho. Texas has its own damn cable channel. I don't care that we lost Texas. But if we're going to be competitive in the NC2As, we have to get better seeds in 16. We have to eventually beat teams like WSU. Mm-hmm. So as far as expectations, I'm going to say at this point, I still think this team is going to be favored to finish towards the top of the Big Sky. We're undefeated in Big Sky play.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, there's no reason to expect a tournament berth is going to equate to a tournament win.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So with that, Martin, it's time for us to close the bar.
Aww.
I know, man. These basketball episodes, we try to keep them tight for you guys. Football, we'll go do our Grizz fan 9-hour podcast impression. But basketball is trying to keep them nice and tight. So it's time to close the bar. Martin, before I ask you what you have going on in your life, I just have to say, Tubs the Club, we just finished maybe the biggest event, not maybe the biggest event in Tubs the Club history.
It is the biggest.
Yeah, the biggest event. And I was waiting for you to throw another Chuck Staven joke in. But Scott Green, look, we did the interview. And the Scott Green interview is going to air as a holiday special. It's going to premiere live on YouTube December 23rd at 6 p.m. Pacific right here on our YouTube channel. Think of it as a Christmas gift from Tubs the Club to our loyal listeners. The big interview that you guys wanted was C. Scott Green. Look, everyone still wants Terry Gollick, but we took a step above Terry Gollick. We got C. Scott Green on there. This is absolutely must see. If you can't watch it live, it's obviously must download. But that's the big thing we have going at Tubs the Club. But even before then, Martin.
What?
Even before December 23rd, we've got a big event too.
Mm-hmm.
That's not one you spend a lot of time on.
Yeah.
National Signing Day, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. National Signing Day starts tomorrow, December 16th. and goes through December 18th. So hopefully we should have some fresh new Vandal football coverage to talk about as well coming up soon.
Absolutely. And we still look, the Scott Green episode, that's going to be a standalone thing for us. Our next Vandal Hoops episode is going to come Tuesday, December 22nd. So honestly, man, Tubbs of the Club is giving you guys a ton of Christmas presents. So yeah, we're going to pat ourselves on the back. Thank you guys, of course. It's all for listeners. But Martin, for us to close it down, what do you got going on in your life other than National Signing Day tomorrow? Other than December?
I've got a whole lot right now. I've got, again, I'm just, like I've said in other episodes, I'm living in Moscow. It's cold, it's wet, it's snowing, it's slushy. And I'm just living it up in Moscow right now.
You're saying it's thematically aligned with the basketball we saw?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can say that. Also, we didn't go to Boise State Junior College, so our listeners know what thematically aligned means. What I have going on in my life, man, honestly, getting into Big Sky basketball. You know, there's a second week of conference season that's opening pretty quick. Idaho's not in that second week. It's kind of actually like the first. We've really only 4 teams opened up Big Sky play the week we did. So the other teams are going to be opening up this weekend. I'm going to see a little bit of that. Other than that, man, I am staring at my computer waiting for December 23rd to come around so I can catch that interview. That's what I got going on, man. So honestly, I think it's time to do it. We are going to thank you guys for downloading, and it's time for the
best band in all the land
to play us out. Sound of Idaho.
Go Vandals.